Kamala Harris is done having precisely 306 to 232 electoral vote margins. Her performance has been appalling compared to Biden from 2020. Based on the polls 4 years ago, Joe Biden was en route to establish North Carolina, Florida, maybe Texas, and Ohio. They have her losing the election totally today, and given that Trump is consistently undervalued in these polls, that is very alarming. And there, for over the past few days, the Trafalgar Group and Insider Advantage have produced a series of polls. Naturally, Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. They polled all 7 of the swing states. Their results, too, are quite fascinating. Trump leads in every one of the 3 Rust Belt states the Trafalgar Group polled. In Michigan, a state he lost almost 3 years ago, he leads by 2%, and then he leads by 1% in Wisconsin. Generally speaking, this state is the most conservative of the 3 blue wall states, but things might change this time. Trump is at 47, Harris at 46, and then Trump leads by an amazing 3 points, 48 to Harris's 45 in the Keystone state of Pennsylvania, and maybe the most significant state on the map. Should the vice president lose this state by even 0.1%, she will have no reasonable route to become president. And things don't really improve for Harris in the 4 surviving states. The Insider Advantage poll from Georgia, where Harris and Trump share 48%, is the only poll where she is not losing. There, we have an even race. Trump leads by 1%, while in North Carolina, Nevada, and Arizona, Trump has slight leads. You could look at these figures and argue that Trump has a rather meager lead in practically every one of these states. Given these polls, Michigan and Pennsylvania right now lean red, while the other states will be tilted as well. Wisconsin will be tilt red. You must, however, take poll inaccuracy into account. Pollsters have always understated Trump's popularity, and for this reason, he is in far better shape than what the raw statistics indicate. For instance, Joe Biden was on target in Wisconsin based on 2020 polls to win the state by an amazing 8.4%. Given that Trump had only won the state 4 years prior, it was going to be a landslide. Joe Biden was expected to win by a comfortable margin. Actually, following April of 2020, Trump never topped the polling average. In the months following, Joe Biden maintained a steady lead, and he really surged at the very last minute. His lead rose from 6.5% to 8.4% in that last week. Joe Biden was thus on target to defeat Trump in Wisconsin. But in the end, people were taken aback by just how narrow a victory the now president obtained. Only 0.63%. Biden's triumph in Wisconsin in 2020 was, in reality, less than Trump's triumph in the state over Hillary Clinton in 2016. Thus, today, Wisconsin would likely be a red state if Trump leads by 1% in the polling. And let us just pretend he is underestimated once more by 8 points. Based solely on current numbers, the polling data indicates Wisconsin as a tilt state. Ultimately, though, if the polls are equally erroneous, Trump can most certainly prevail by a reasonable margin. Clearly, Wisconsin is now probably more competitive than this, but we will eventually fix the map. For now, just to show how excellent a position Trump is in, if polls are similarly as erroneous as they were between Biden and Trump, Trump is heading to Wisconsin by 7 points or more versus Kamala Harris, and that would constitute a significant event. Biden was projected to win in Michigan by 7.9%. Once more, a sizable margin. Trump hardly registered at the end. Polling had Biden winning by almost a double-digit margin, but subsequently, it dropped to less than 8. Ultimately, Biden carried the Wolverine state by 2.8%. Now, the poll results here were not as erroneous as those of their Western neighbor. It still understated Trump by a shocking 5 points. Given that this state as a whole was chosen by half of that 5-point mistake, that truly is rather a lot. Therefore, should the polling go wrong once more and understate Trump by 5 points in this race versus Kamala Harris, Trump will once more be victorious in Michigan by 7 points. On this map, it will still be another probably red state. Right now, Trump leads by 2 points in the polling average. When you boost that by 5 more points, that lead will drive the state into likely habitable territory. In Pennsylvania, the polls were more accurate. Joe Biden was expected to prevail by 4.7%. Finally, he prevailed in the state by 1.2%. They thereby overstated him by 3.5%. Not as bad as in Michigan or Wisconsin, but looking at Trump's present 3-point margin in the state, adding another 3.5% would put Trump on track to win the Keystone State by 6.5 points, which would still keep it barely within the lean range. Still, in what is arguably the most significant state on the map, the former president would emerge victorious dominantly. Then, with the 4 Sunbelt states, polling has been more accurate than up north, though they clearly overestimate Democrats. Looking at Georgia's polling data, it's likely the most accurate state of all the competing ones in the country. In 2022, Joe Biden was expected to prevail by 1.2%. Given the current status of polling, their missed percentage of 1% is really decent. At 0.24, Joe Biden finally secured the Peach State, marking the first Democrat to carry Georgia since Bill Clinton in 1992. They were able to forecast the triumph of the incumbent president here, although they still overstated his margin. Considering his performance tonight, we have a tie between Harris and Trump. Should Trump be underappreciated by 1% once more, the Peach State will remain crimson. Once more, this is only for decorative needs. Later on in this video, we shall return and correct the map. Turning now to North Carolina, this state's people were sure Joe Biden would prevail in the most recent election. People were taken aback, especially when Georgia chose the current president instead of North Carolina, since Trump did not lead over Biden at any one moment in time across the whole 2020 campaign. The Tar Heel state was destined back toward the Democrats. They had not won this state since 2008. Joe Biden was primed for triumph, but Cal Cunningham most likely had the cause of his loss. The Senate despised it since the exposed cheater on his wife was hated. His wife left him in October, which was simply a major state scandal. For North Carolina Democrats, it served as essentially the October surprise. Biden lost most likely from this as well. The poll pulled nearly 3% above the presidency. Trump prevailed by 1.3% finally in North Carolina. Out of the 7 competitive states today, only 1 has visited the previous president in both 2016 and 2020. Regarding North Carolina, Trump seems rather unlikely to lose it this time. He will triumph 3 times in succession. Should the polls understate him by 3 points once again, he will be able to win the state by 4%. North Carolina will thus be a lean red if we correct for the past inaccuracy. Nevada was next. The polling was not bad, but it still overexpected Biden by 3 points. The statistics show he was meant to win by 5.3%. At last, he beat Trump in the state by 2.4%. The same margin Hillary Clinton secured in Nevada in 2016. Nevada stayed the same as the whole nation turned left from 2016 to 2020. It was a sign of the general GOP trend of the state. Nevada chose a Republican governor in a close contest in 2022. And today, Trump has a decent chance of being the first Republican to win the Silver State since George W. Bush in 2004. For Trump, this would be a somewhat spectacular turnaround. Looking at the polling now, he leads by 1%, correcting for the 2020 mistake. He's going to carry Nevada by 4 points. On our map, it will be another lean red state. And then at last in Arizona, once more the polling was not bad, but it most obviously overestimated Democrats. Looking at the figures provided, Biden was expected to triumph by 2.6%. They did forecast his triumph precisely. He obtained a 0.31% state margin. The polling was rather off. They managed to ascertain Biden's winning outcome. Clearly, though, they failed to adequately portray the level of competitiveness this state possessed. Therefore, if we change this 2-point polling error in favor of Biden and then stack that on top of Trump's present 1% edge today, Trump has a 3-point advantage over Harris. Thus, depending on the fresh polling we have, you can see that Trump is going to completely smash Kamala Harris in all of the swing states, assuming we correct for the overall error perpetrated with 2020 polls. Furthermore, without the swing states, Harris lacks a road to triumph. We will now complete the remaining portion of the map so that you may identify which states Trump truly needs and which ones are merely accessories. I will thus fill in the firm states and probably states now for both contenders. These are all the states that truly won't be highly contested. One contender clearly has a somewhat significant advantage in these states over the other. Like he has done in the past 2 election cycles, Trump is therefore essentially going to win all the states in the middle of the nation. There is not going to be excessive drama there. Indeed, states like Texas and Florida were regarded as competitive in 2020, alongside Iowa and Ohio. That is no longer the case. Trump is going to comfortably prevail in those contests. With all of these solid and likely states filled in for Harris, we will eliminate the 7 swing states. Trump will be at 219. Thus, essentially at this moment, with just the competitive states left, Trump is already just 51 electoral votes from the presidency. Now, we will be filling in a few more states. These will be the lean states. They will probably go one way or another. Together with the 2nd District of Nebraska, New Mexico, Minnesota, New Hampshire, and Maine, are all lean blue states. Thus now, we are left essentially with the 7 swing states plus Virginia, which is usually regarded as the most competitive. Though they only have just 106 electoral votes, they truly have all the influence. I shall start with Virginia in order to cover these 8 last states. It will most likely slink slightly towards Harris. Democrats have a long track record of winning the state, though it's honestly not quite definitive. They haven't lost it since 2004. To be honest, it doesn't change too much of the arithmetic if Virginia goes red and Trump loses the election, or if Virginia goes blue. Thus, we now have the 7 states that the Trafalgar Group and insider knowledge drew under influence, and given this information, you may see Trump in a really favorable position to prevail regarding overcoming 270 electoral votes. The former president would find the shortest route via Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. He wouldn't even need the 2nd District of Nebraska. Just 3 of the 7 states would get him at precisely 270. Nonetheless, in terms of what is most likely to happen, that is most certainly not the situation. Based on the most recent polls, we most likely will see Donald Trump prevail in Arizona first out of all the swing states. Actually, Arizona has become most conservative. Apart from Georgia, Trump is performing better in Arizona than in Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Before he conquers any states in the Midwest, Trump will also triumph in North Carolina and Georgia. Regarding margin, he will thus win Arizona by the biggest margin, and thereafter either Georgia or North Carolina. This ranks him at 262. He can already win any one of the 3 Midwestern states. Like in other times, Trump is also performing far better in Pennsylvania than in other states. Keystone State has been moving to the right. Furthermore, Tim Walsh's influence will be felt considerably more in rural Michigan and Wisconsin, not nearly as much in Pennsylvania, hundreds of miles east, since Kamala Harris selected Walsh to be her running buddy. So, Pennsylvania is most likely the state that gets Trump over 270. My present estimate indicates that it will be lean red. Hence, Trump is already done at this moment. He's worked on it. He passed the election. He can yet win a couple more states, though right now, I also have Nevada, Michigan, and Wisconsin as lean red. These 3 states clearly will be really close together. If Harris wins some of these, I wouldn't be shocked. Should she win any, Michigan first will most likely be followed by Nevada, then Wisconsin. She will not be able to win the election, though. Even if she gains these 3 states, she would still lose to Trump. Even if she might also win Arizona, that truly emphasizes how excellent of a position the former president currently holds. Over the past 2 election cycles, never at any one moment have the polls indicated that Trump would be victorious. Each single time, they have Trump losing. Originally expected to be a Hillary Clinton landslide in 2016, Trump ultimately turned 6 states, 5 in the Midwest, essentially all the Midwest except for Minnesota and Illinois. He then also turned the Sunshine State of Florida upside down. For Biden, 2020 was meant to be a modern-day landslide. Still, Biden hardly prevailed in the end. His triumphs in Arizona, Georgia, and Wisconsin helped him to recover over 270. He would have lost the election totally if he had not prevailed in 3 states. 2020 was thus a very tight contest. decided by razor-thin margins in 3 states, even though Biden won 306 electoral votes. Fortunately for Democrats, this meant, though now is quite different. Trump is leading historically based on the surveys. Real Clear Politics suggests that his electoral vote count is 281. Harris falls at just 257. Polls are essentially deadlocked in Nevada, Wisconsin, and Michigan. Clearly, these will be close battles. Trump is winning them here. Given how much the polls have overstated Democratic support here in the past, Harris leading in the polls here doesn't actually mean too much. Considering J.D. Vance's very strong performance against Tim Walsh in the vice presidential debate, which is most likely the last debate of this cycle and the one that people will be thinking about right now, especially in light of this new data, I believe Trump is in quite a good position to win. Trump has configured himself for a second triumph as the 47th president. He will be back at the White House.